On my brother's wedding day, I witnessed my husband and my future sister-in-law sharing a moment of secret passion in a dark corner. But instead of causing a scene right then and there, I joined forces with my brother to turn that day of celebration into a stage for unforgettable revelations, causing them to lose everything in a matter of hours. How could a groom betrayed by his own fiancée maintain such composure? My story might seem unbelievable to many, but it is the bitter raw truth I had to live through. It was a sunny day in New York City. The Plaza Hotel was adorned with luxurious white silk ribbons and fresh flowers. Dazzling crystal chandeliers illuminated everything, making it sparkle like a fairy tale scene. Soft music and words of blessing filled the air. Today was the big day for my brother Liam and my future sister-in-law, Sophia. As the groom's sister, Chloe, I couldn't hide my happiness and pride. Standing in a corner of the grand ballroom, I smiled as I watched my brother in his impeccable tuxedo. His handsome face was radiant with joy. He's 5 years my senior, and ever since we were kids, he has always looked after and protected me. After our parents passed away prematurely, he was a father, a friend, my whole world. Seeing that he had found a lifelong refuge with a woman as beautiful and sweet as Sophia filled my heart with infinite warmth. Sophia had a fragile and delicate appearance. She spoke in a soft voice and always looked at my brother with admiration. During their courtship, she treated me like a true sister. I thought our small family was finally complete and that I too had found my own happiness. My husband Ethan stood beside me, his arm around my waist. He was a talented architect and in my eyes and everyone else's, the perfect man. We had been married for 5 years and had a marriage that was the envy of all. He was always gentle and attentive, my pillar of support through every storm. He gently squeezed my hand and whispered in my ear, "Your brother looks amazing today, and your sister-in-law looks like a dream. They're a match made in heaven." I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder, feeling the familiar sense of calm. Yes, I hope they'll be as happy as we are. I sincerely believe I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had a brother who adored me, a wonderful husband, and soon a lovely sister-in-law. I was living in that rose-colored bubble until just a few minutes later, I burst it with my own hands. The ceremony was about to begin. I suddenly realized that my husband had been gone for a while. I wanted to take a picture with the bride and groom before they went on stage. I looked around but didn't see his familiar figure. I thought maybe he had stepped out to take a call, so I walked alone towards the end of the hallway where there was a small balcony overlooking the hotel's rear garden. It was a rather quiet place, so I assumed he might be there. As I got closer, I heard whispers mixed with a woman's giggle. That voice was all too familiar. I slowed my pace, my heart suddenly starting to beat a little faster. Through the crack of the open glass door leading to the balcony, I saw a scene that made my blood run cold. My husband Ethan was there, and the woman he was holding in his arms, kissing passionately, was none other than the bride of the day, Sophia, my future sister-in-law. She was still wearing her immaculate wedding dress, but now it seemed incredibly disgusting and hypocritical to me. Time seemed to stand still. My ears went deaf, all the sounds around me disappeared and I could only hear the sound of my heart shattering. I leaned heavily against the cold wall to keep from collapsing. A lump formed in my throat and a wave of nausea rose in my chest. And then their conversation reached my ears. Every word was like a sharp knife, mercilessly stabbing the last shred of hope I had left. "You're very bold, babe. Meeting here at this hour." Sophia's voice was flirtatious. Her hands were still wrapped around Ethan's neck. Ethan scoffed. A laugh I had never heard from him, full of arrogance and disdain. "What are you afraid of? No one would ever imagine. Look at that stupid family of hers busy running around like puppets. And her brother, that Liam, he's just a lovesick fool. We have everything under control." That stupid referred to me. A lovesick fool referred to my brother. I clenched my fists tightly. My nails dug into my flesh, but I felt no pain. "Still, I'm a little nervous," Sophia continued. "What if everything is discovered later? Besides, I don't like the idea of living with you and your wife." Ethan laughed again, this time with contempt. "You don't have to be jealous of that kid. I married her only for the status of being the daughter of a well-respected, educated family, to fool the world. She's nothing more than a baby machine, my shield. As soon as she gives me a son, I'll find a way to get rid of her. Soon, all of Liam's fortune will be ours, and then you can have whatever you want, my love, my love." Those 2 words struck me like lightning. I couldn't bear it anymore. My world, my beliefs, 5 years of love, everything had been shattered in an instant. I turned around and began walking like an automaton. I didn't know where I was going. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't have the courage to cry out loud. I just felt disgust, a profound disgust. Stumbling along, my mind blank, I bumped into someone. Lifting my head through my tear-blurred vision, I saw a figure. It was my brother, the groom of the day. Liam, seeing my pitiful state, furrowed his handsome brow slightly. "Chloe, what's wrong? Did something happen?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. I threw my arms around him and burst into tears. Between choked sobs, I told him everything I had just seen and heard. I expected him to be furious, to run to that balcony and smash everything, to call off the wedding immediately. But he just listened to me in silence, gently patting my back with his large hand. When I stopped crying, he gently pushed me away and looked me straight in the eye. On his face, there was neither surprise nor anger, only a terrifying calm. He wiped my tears gently and then gave me a wink, a meaningful gesture that only we as siblings understood. He whispered in my ear, a sentence I will never forget in my life. "Don't worry, the main event is about to begin." What would happen to this story? What was the main event my brother was talking about? If you, dear listeners, are as curious as I am, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this dramatic tale. My brother Liam's words fell like a thunderbolt in my ears, leaving me so stunned that I even forgot to cry. The main event. In such a critical situation, when my beloved brother was being betrayed on his wedding day by his fiancée and my husband, how could he say something like that so calmly? My mind was in chaos. I thought perhaps the shock had been so great that he had lost his mind. Seeing me still standing there, dazed, Liam said nothing more. He simply took my hand firmly and led me towards the end of the hall where the groom's waiting room was located. He looked around cautiously and only after making sure no one was there, he pushed me inside and locked the door. The room was decorated with white ribbons and balloons, but the air inside was heavy and tense, almost suffocating. "Chloe, listen to me carefully." Liam turned and looked me straight in the eye. His expression was no longer one of terrifying calm. It was the seriousness and cold determination I only saw when he made important business decisions. "I've known about all this for a long time." I froze once again. "For a long time? How? How is that possible?" Liam sighed and pulled a chair over for me to sit down. "It was 3 months ago," he began to recount. "I started to notice that something wasn't right. That woman, Sophia, showed an excessive interest in the management of our company. She frequently asked about projects or the financial situation, details that a fiancé wouldn't normally care to know in such detail. And your husband Ethan acted with an abnormal familiarity with her. Subtle glances, small gestures, things that only those involved would notice. A knot formed in my chest. While I was blind with happiness, my brother had been silently detecting the dangerous undercurrents. I had a bad feeling, he continued. So, I secretly hired a private investigator, and what they discovered was far more terrible than I had imagined. It wasn't just infidelity, Chloe. Behind it all was a meticulously calculated conspiracy. Liam opened his phone and showed me several photos and documents. They were pictures of Ethan and Sophia on secret dates in luxurious places. There were also bank statements showing large sums of money transferred from an unidentified account to Sophia's. And what horrified me the most was a detailed plan found in Ethan's emails. The plan was organized in phases. First, Sophia would seduce my brother with her beauty and false sweetness to marry him and officially become part of our family. At the same time, Ethan, as my husband, would use my trust to gradually leak internal company information. Their ultimate goal was that after the wedding, Sophia would convince Liam to entrust Ethan with the management of several important projects. That way they could conspire to embezzle company funds, create ghost debts, and finally bankrupt the company our parents left us to take everything. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. My 5 years of marriage, the love I had cultivated, had all been just a move in their plan. Ethan didn't love me. He had only used me as a pawn and a tool to carry out his dirty conspiracy. Romantic betrayal now turned into a deep hatred. They had not only trampled on my feelings, but they had also tried to destroy our parents' life's work. Then why? Why did you go ahead with this wedding knowing everything? I asked, looking up at my brother. My voice trembled. Liam looked at me and a sharp glint crossed his eyes. If I had broken off the engagement, then we would have only caught 2 small fish, Ethan and Sophia. The one pulling the strings from the shadows would have never been revealed. Besides, we didn't have enough evidence to expose their entire conspiracy. My brother decided to turn the wedding itself into a trap, a grand stage where everyone could witness the play together. Liam squeezed my hand. I have everything prepared. Chloe, the company's important assets have been transferred to a secure trust. The projects they're interested in are just shell projects with no value, and I've installed recorders and cameras everywhere. We just have to wait for them to expose themselves. I looked at my brother, feeling both pity and admiration. He had endured all of this alone, planning and counterattacking, while I was still happy in my false rose-colored world. Now I need you. Liam's voice became more serious than ever. Your appearance, the fact that you discovered the truth at this moment, is a variable they didn't expect. But that will become our ace in the hole. Ethan and Sophia will only see you as a poor wife, heartbroken by betrayal. They will never suspect you right now. Keep playing that role. Keep crying. Pretend to be devastated. The more miserable you appear, the better. Can you do it? I quickly wiped my tears. The pain still burned in my chest, but now it had transformed into the flames of hatred. My brother was right. This was no time to be weak. I was not just crying over my husband's betrayal. I had to fight for justice for our entire family. I can do it. I nodded, my voice much firmer. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Mr. Miller, it's time for the ceremony to begin. It was the wedding planner's voice. Liam stood up and adjusted his bow tie. He looked at me and smiled, a smile full of confidence. All right, little sis. Let's go out there. The show is about to begin. Remember, you are not alone. Your brother is here. My brother opened the door and we walked out together. As we reached the main hall, we saw Ethan and Sophia cheerfully talking with some guests, arm in arm. Upon seeing Liam and me, Ethan quickly approached with his usual concerned expression. Chloe, where have you been? I've been looking all over for you. I looked up at him. My eyes were still swollen from crying. I said nothing, just shook my head and moved closer to my brother. Ethan seemed a bit puzzled by my coldness, but probably chalked it up to exhaustion. The music in the wedding hall suddenly became more solemn. The master of ceremonies announced in a powerful voice, and now, let's give a warm welcome to today's stars, the groom, Mr. Liam Miller, and the bride, Miss Sophia Reed. All the lights focused on them, and all eyes were filled with admiration. And as my brother, the groom, took that woman's hand, the woman who almost became my sister-in-law, to enter the hall, I smiled. My smile was probably the most perfect lie of my life, but it was also the smile that foretold the storm to come. Under the dazzling stage lights, my brother and Sophia looked like a perfect couple. Liam still wore a happy smile, but I knew it was just part of a flawless performance. She pretended to be shy and sweet, occasionally casting loving glances at him. She was an exceptional actress. They walked together down an aisle covered in white roses to the incessant applause of hundreds of guests. I sat in the front row of the family section with Ethan by my side. He still had his arm around my shoulders, whispering sweet nothings to me from time to time. Aren't they beautiful? I hope we'll celebrate such a grand wedding anniversary, too. I just leaned on his shoulder in silence, pretending to be intoxicated by the romantic atmosphere of the ceremony. But in reality, I was struggling to suppress the nausea rising in my throat. Every one of his words and actions now felt repulsive to me. His hand on my shoulder, the same hand that had once caressed me with tenderness, was the same one that had embraced another woman just minutes before. The ceremony proceeded according to the usual protocol. The MC with his syrupy voice praised the predestined love story and the meeting of two souls. Hearing it, I almost laughed out loud. Destiny? Yes, a destiny woven with conspiracies and calculations. After the empty speeches, the moment for the exchange of rings finally arrived. An adorable flower girl dressed in pristine white came onto the stage with the wedding rings on a red velvet pillow. Liam and Sophia faced each other, ready to exchange their symbols of love. One moment. Suddenly, a voice from the audience broke the sacred moment. The entire hall held its breath, and all eyes turned to the person who had just spoken. It was a middle-aged woman. Her attire was quite elegant, but her face was filled with anger and pain. She was accompanied by an older man, probably her husband. I saw Sophia on stage flinch slightly and her face turned pale for an instant. My brother remained calm as if he had anticipated this woman's appearance. Excuse me, who are you? What's going on? The MC tried to control the situation. The woman didn't answer, but walked directly onto the stage and stood in front of Sophia. Sophia, do you recognize me? She said, her voice a mix of anger and disappointment. Sophia took a step back, her face so pale it was drained of blood. Ma'am, how are you here? Why shouldn't I be here? The woman scoffed bitterly. I came to see how my future daughter-in-law, the one who swore eternal love to my son, is about to become another man's wife. I came to seek justice for my son. A murmur began to spread among the guests. Future daughter-in-law, son, what was happening? Ethan sitting beside me was also surprised. What's going on, Chloe? Who is that woman? He asked me. I just shook my head, finding equal surprise and confusion. The woman turned to the guests and raised her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt this happy day, but there's something I must say. This young lady on the stage, Sophia, was my son's fiancée. They were in love for 5 years, celebrated their engagement, and were just waiting for the wedding date. But in just a few months, she changed her mind and left with a richer man, leaving my son in terrible pain. As she finished, she pulled out a stack of photos from her purse and threw them onto the stage. Photos of Sophia with another man in affectionate poses scattered across the floor. There were also pictures from their engagement party. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Now all the gazes directed at the bride were not of admiration, but of curiosity, doubt, and reproach. Sophia stood frozen on the stage, her face as white as a sheet. She tried to explain, stammering, "No, it's not like that. That person and I, we broke up a long time ago." "Broke up?" The woman scoffed again. "How shameless you are. Now you lie. Just 3 months ago, you took money from my son for shopping and investments. You deceived and used him. How can you betray him like this now?" Sophia couldn't say anything and looked at Liam with pleading eyes. But my brother, the groom and the one who should have been the most furious, simply crossed his arms and looked at her with an unfamiliar coldness and distance. I, sitting below, watched the play unfold in silence. I knew this was the first act my brother had prepared. He had found the ex-boyfriend Sophia had abandoned and invited his mother here. He wanted to rip off Sophia's mask of innocence and purity in front of everyone. Seeing the situation getting out of hand, Sophia suddenly clutched her chest, staggered, and collapsed on the stage, feigning a faint. "Oh my God, the bride has fainted." Some people shouted. Sophia's family, whom I knew were nothing more than hired actors, rushed to the stage, creating a chaotic scene. Amidst it all, Liam slowly walked over and looked down at the fainted Sophia. He showed no concern, but rather a slight smile. He took the microphone from the stunned MC. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice resonated firm and clear, silencing all the noise. "I'm sorry to have shown you such an unpleasant play, but I believe the truth must always come to light." He glanced at Sophia, who was peeking at the crowd's reaction. "You act very well, Miss Reed, but I think it's time to end this farce." His words were like a bucket of cold water for everyone. Sophia, startled, quickly closed her eyes, but it was too late. Everyone had seen her. And to make this play even more interesting, Liam continued, "I'd like to invite another special guest to the stage, someone who is very closely related to this charade." He looked towards where Ethan and I were sitting, and my heart started to beat faster. I knew it was our turn to take the stage. The stage lights suddenly swung directly onto Ethan and me, making us the center of attention. Hundreds of curious and surprised pairs of eyes were fixed on the family section. Ethan was stunned, not understanding what was happening. He turned to me and whispered in a confused voice, "Who is your brother calling? A special guest?" I didn't answer, just looked at him with tear-filled eyes, with an innocent and helpless expression. I knew it was my turn to act. On stage, Liam continued, raising his voice. This time, he addressed my husband directly. "The person I want to invite is none other than my brother-in-law, the architect, Ethan Thompson. Could you please come up here and share in this joy with us?" This sudden invitation caused even more of a stir in the hall. People didn't understand why the groom would call his brother-in-law to the stage at such a delicate moment. Ethan was completely paralyzed. He looked at me, then at the stage, and his face turned pale. He probably started to feel that something was very wrong, but faced with his brother-in-law's public invitation and the gaze of hundreds of people, he couldn't refuse. "Go on up, honey," I said softly, giving him a gentle push on the back. With an innocent tone, I added, "Maybe Liam wants you to share the secret of a happy marriage." My words were like a pinprick, but enough to make Ethan flinch. He swallowed hard and forcing a smile, slowly got up and walked towards the stage. Each of his steps seemed to weigh a ton. When Ethan got on stage, Liam put an arm around his shoulders in an affectionate manner and addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think my brother-in-law is handsome and talented? I'm very proud to have a brother-in-law like him. Not only is he a talented architect, but also a wonderful husband who deeply loves my sister." Liam's praise baffled Ethan even more. He could only smile awkwardly without saying a word. "And perhaps," Liam continued, his voice suddenly becoming meaningful, "he's so perfect that not only my sister loves him, but other women love him, too. Isn't that right, my dear bride?" Liam turned to Sophia, who was still lying on the floor pretending to be unconscious. But upon hearing this, I saw her eyelids tremble slightly. Ethan's face was now as white as a sheet. He started to sweat cold and tried to wriggle out of Liam's arm. "Brother-in-law, what are you saying? Everyone is misunderstanding things." "Misunderstanding?" Liam laughed out loud, a laugh without any warmth. "Well, let me show everyone what the misunderstanding is." As he finished, Liam signaled to the technical crew. The two enormous LED screens on either side of the stage, which had originally been showing romantic photos of the bride and groom, suddenly went dark and then lit up again. But this time, the image that appeared was not of roses or candles. It was a video recorded from a hidden angle on the balcony. The entire hall gasped. The same scene that I had to witness just an hour before unfolded vividly before the eyes of hundreds of people. My husband Ethan passionately embracing and kissing the bride Sophia dressed in her immaculate wedding dress. The audio was also recorded with great clarity. Each of their disgusting words echoed throughout the hall. That stupid family of hers busy running around like puppets. And that Liam, he's just a lovesick fool. I married her only to fool the world. She's nothing more than a baby machine. The entire ballroom seemed to explode. Shouts, insults, and looks of contempt rained down mercilessly on the two people on stage. The most sordid drama of adultery and betrayal was being projected in the most vivid way possible. Sophia could no longer keep up her fainting act. She jumped up, pale and trembling from head to toe. Ethan could barely stand. He staggered back a few steps and pointing at the screen, stammered, "No, it's not true. It's edited. It's fake." But his weak words couldn't quell the crowd's anger. Trash. What a pair of cheaters. I can't believe it. Insults erupted from all sides. Sophia's fake family couldn't continue acting either. They stood frozen, their faces red with shame, not knowing what to do, and I was still sitting in the front row. The tears started to flow again. This time, it wasn't an act. They were tears of pain from having to relive that scene and hear those poisonous words again in front of so many people. I covered my face with my hands, my shoulders shaking. I had to portray the image of a miserable victim, a wife completely shattered by the cruel truth. On stage, Liam looked at me and a flash of compassion crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by cold determination. He walked over and snatched the microphone from the MC's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted. His voice had an invisible force that instantly silenced the chaotic hall. "Have you all seen it? This is the true face of the woman I was about to marry and the man I once considered my brother-in-law, part of my family." He turned to Ethan and Sophia. His gaze was like two knives. "Do you two have anything else to say? Or do you want me to show you something even more interesting?" Ethan and Sophia, desperate, could only shake their heads. They were completely cornered with no way to excuse themselves. But all of this, Liam continued, his voice becoming even more mysterious and frightening, doesn't end here. This drama of infidelity is actually just the tip of a much larger iceberg. The entire hall fell silent again. Everyone wondered what the groom meant. Liam pulled out a stack of documents from his tuxedo pocket and held it up for everyone to see. What they really wanted wasn't love, but this. What was in that stack of documents? And what connection did it have with the person who, according to my brother, was pulling the strings from the shadows? All eyes were fixed on the stack of papers in my brother's hand, waiting for an even more terrible truth to be revealed. The stack of documents in Liam's hand was like a mysterious object that captured everyone's attention. The whole room held its breath, waiting to see which way this drama would unfold. Ethan and Sophia also looked up, and in their desperate eyes, terror was now reflected. They probably knew better than anyone what those papers contained. "Before I tell you what this is," Liam said in a slow, clear voice, "I'd like to tell you a little story. The story of a cunning old fox who used two skunks to rob a hen house." He scanned the room, his gaze piercing through some of the guests seated in the VIP section. I noticed a middle-aged man with a stout face and dressed in an elegant gray suit suddenly tense up. He coughed lightly and adjusted his tie. The fox, Liam continued, knew the hen house was very well protected, so he didn't dare act on his own. That's why he found two skunks, a male and a female. He promised them a life of abundance, food, and warm clothing. They just had to help him carry out a plan. The female skunk's mission was to seduce the head rooster, the future owner of the hen house. The male skunk's mission was to court the head rooster's sister, a naive hen, to become part of the family. Hearing this, I no longer needed to act. The tears flowed for real. My brother's metaphorical story was like another knife twisting in my pain. I was that naive hen. Their ultimate goal, Liam's voice grew even colder, was after gaining their trust, to slowly open the doors and break the fences so that the old fox from outside could quietly come in and take over the entire hen house. Isn't that a perfect plan? He looked directly at Ethan and Sophia. "You two skunks, does this story sound familiar?" Ethan and Sophia couldn't say anything, just hung their heads in shame. And this Liam raised the stack of documents is the detailed plan and the map that the old fox drew for the two skunks. The map that tells them which path to take and where to break the fence. This is the complete plan to take over the Miller Corporation, our parents' life's work. He flipped through the documents one by one, projecting their contents directly onto the big screen. Figures, charts, and dirty business strategies appeared clearly. Their plan was not limited to embezzling company funds. It included creating false scandals, undermining Liam's credibility, and fomenting internal divisions to finally create the conditions for a rival company to acquire the Miller Corporation at a bargain price. And the name of that rival company was also written in plain sight: Aurelian Holdings. The entire hall began to murmur again. Aurelian Holdings was not an unknown name in the business world. It was an emerging force that had risen rapidly with bold and controversial moves. And the man in the gray suit, who had shown strange behavior before, was none other than the CEO of Aurelian Holdings, Mr. Caldwell. Now all eyes were on him. Mr. Caldwell turned pale, but tried to maintain his composure. He stood up, straightened his clothes, and tried to leave the room. "Mr. Caldwell, where are you going in such a hurry?" Liam's voice was like an invisible rope tying his ankles. "The best part is yet to come. You wouldn't want to miss it." Mr. Caldwell turned and forced an awkward business smile. "CEO Miller, I believe there's a misunderstanding. I have nothing to do with your company's internal affairs." "Nothing to do?" Liam laughed coldly. "Then how do you explain your secret meetings with these two people and the money you sent Miss Reed so she could pose as a rich girl and the promise of a project director position to Mr. Thompson if everything went well?" Each of Liam's questions was a heavy blow that left Mr. Caldwell barely able to stand. I knew my brother wasn't just talking. He had all the evidence in his hands. Just then, two men in plain clothes who looked like police detectives slowly approached Mr. Caldwell's table. They said nothing, just stared at him with a solemn gaze. Mr. Caldwell realized that all his escape routes were blocked. He collapsed into his chair, his forehead drenched in sweat. The play he had so carefully constructed was about to end. The old fox had finally been cornered. I, sitting below, watched it all. My heart was no longer filled with personal pain, but with anger at the vileness and cruelty of the business world. For profit, they were capable of trampling on everything: love, family ties, even human decency. My husband, Ethan, whom I once loved madly, was just a pawn on someone else's chessboard. He had sold his soul for a vain promise. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was no longer shamelessness, but an extreme emptiness and despair. He had lost everything: love, honor, and also his future. On stage, Liam, after exposing the entire conspiracy, turned to me. He walked in my direction without saying a word and held out his hand. I took his hand and we went up on stage together. He took the microphone and his voice was no longer sharp, but softened with a touch of compassion. "Ladies and gentlemen, the person most hurt in this story is not me, but my sister Chloe. This girl has had to endure the deceit and betrayal of the man she loved deeply. She is completely innocent." He turned to me and with a look full of love said, "Chloe, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I should have realized sooner. I should have protected you better." I just shook my head and the tears welled up again, but this time they were tears of emotion and gratitude. "Today's wedding," Liam continued, "will have no bride, but the party will go on. I hope all our distinguished guests will stay and consider this a party to celebrate the truth." The entire hall erupted in applause. They were not applauding for a wedding, but for the courage and victory of justice. Just when I thought it was all over, a sharp scream came from the bride who was collapsed on the floor. Sophia leaped up, tore a sharp hairpin from her hairdo, and with a crazed look, lunged at me. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." Sophia's crazed action was so fast and sudden that it left everyone stunned. The hairpin, glinting under the stage lights, flew towards me like a poisoned arrow. I stood frozen, my mind blank. I realized the imminent danger, but I couldn't react. Liam beside me didn't have time to intervene either. When the tip of the hairpin was just inches from my face, a shadow shot out from behind me like a lightning bolt. It was none other than Ethan. He threw his whole body in front of me. The sharp tip of the hairpin grazed his shoulder, leaving a red bloodstain on his white shirt. "Ah!" Ethan cried out in pain, staggering backward. Sophia seemed shocked by her own action and by Ethan's reaction. She dropped the hairpin and stood there stunned, her face pale. It was then that the hotel security guards rushed to restrain her and led her away. The hall fell into chaos again. Liam rushed to help Ethan. "Are you okay?" Ethan, his face contorted in pain, shook his head. He didn't look at Liam, but at me. His gaze was very complex. There was regret, pain, and somehow a kind of relief. "Chloe, are you okay?" I looked at the blood stain on his shoulder, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Why had he done it? How could the man who had deceived and used me without mercy risk his life to protect me? Or was this another act? An attempt to gain my last shred of compassion. Take him to the first aid room immediately. Liam ordered the hotel staff. As Ethan was being led away, the two plainclothes detectives also took Mr. Caldwell away. The CEO of Aurelian Holdings no longer looked imposing. He was just a defeated old man walking with his head down amidst the accusations and contempt of the people. The wedding farce had finally come to an end. Liam took the microphone again and tried to calm the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I apologize for the unexpected incident. Our party will have to end here. On behalf of my family, I sincerely thank you all for your attendance. The guests began to leave one by one, taking with them an unforgettable story. What had been a splendid wedding hall now looked desolate and cold, like a ruin. Liam and I stood silently in the empty space. Extreme exhaustion washed over us. It's all over, Chloe, Liam said, patting my shoulder gently. I nodded, but a big question still lingered in my mind. Brother, how did you know everything? The company acquisition plan, Mr. Caldwell's role. How did you know? Liam looked at me and gave a sad smile. Because I wasn't the only one who wanted to unmask him. My brother told me another story. A story that had been hidden for years. Before he passed away, our father was a close friend and business partner of Mr. Caldwell. Together, they laid the first bricks for both companies. But it was that same Mr. Caldwell who with dirty tricks cheated our father out of all his shares and drove him to bankruptcy. That blow made our father fall ill and soon after his health deteriorated and he passed away. I always had my doubts about my father's death. Liam's voice became graver. After inheriting the company, I started investigating secretly and gradually found evidence of his crimes. But he was too cunning and covered all his tracks skillfully. I never had enough proof to bring him down. Until Sophia appeared, my brother continued. At first, I was also deceived by her innocent appearance, but I realized there were too many coincidences. She always casually mentioned projects where Aurelian Holdings was competing with us. So, I had her investigated and discovered the relationship between her and Mr. Caldwell. I realized he was trying to repeat the same script with me as he did with my father, and I decided this was my chance to avenge our father. Hearing this, I felt a lump in my throat. Behind the company's success, my brother had been carrying such a heavy burden of revenge. He had had to live a lie, act with the woman he was about to marry, waiting for the day he could bring down his enemy. So, everything was in your plan. Most of it, yes. Liam nodded. Except for one thing. I didn't know your husband was also part of his plan, and much less that you would be the trigger for all of this. Your appearance, your courage was the unexpected variable, the decisive blow that made him fall without having time to react. My brother looked at me with pride. My little sister, you've really grown up. I managed to smile through my tears. We had one together as siblings. We had one. Shortly after, a hotel employee came to inform us that Ethan had received first aid. The wound wasn't deep, but he had to go to the hospital for a tetanus shot and a more thorough checkup. He said he wanted to talk to me alone for a moment before he left. I hesitated a bit, but finally nodded. In the end, I wanted to know if there was any sincerity left in him. I entered the first aid room. Ethan was sitting on a cot, his shoulder bandaged. He looked disheveled. His designer suit was wrinkled and discarded, his shirt stained with blood, and his face lacked all vitality. When he saw me, he looked up with a guilt-ridden gaze. I am sorry, Chloe. What good is an apology now? I asked coldly. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, lowering his head. I just wanted to tell you one thing. The moment I jumped to protect you, that was real. It wasn't an act. I looked at him in silence. For the past 5 years, he continued in a hoarse voice. I've been living a lie. I approached you because of Mr. Caldwell's plan for the money. But then I started to have real feelings for you, your sweetness, your kindness. It moved my heart, but I was in too deep. I couldn't turn back. I wanted you, and I also wanted the money and status. Greed clouded my judgment. He looked up at me and tears started to well in his eyes. Today, when you were in danger, I realized the only thing I wanted to protect was you, but it's too late for everything. I listened to his belated confession without any emotion in my heart. Love? Perhaps there was some, but the betrayal and the damage he caused had killed that love. Save those words for the judge, I said, my voice expressionless. Between us, everything is over. I turned and walked out, leaving him alone with his regret and his late tears. The moment the first aid room door closed, the door to my 5 years of marriage also closed officially and forever. A week after the stormy wedding, things gradually began to calm down, but the aftermath was still enormous. The Aurelian Holdings case became a scandal that shook the business world. Mr. Caldwell, Sophia, and several other top executives were arrested and investigated for fraud, embezzlement, and industrial espionage. Despite his act of saving me, Ethan couldn't escape his involvement. As a key part of the plan, he was summoned to testify and face the inevitable justice. I filed for divorce, and the whole process was carried out quickly and without dispute. We decided to sell our house, our only valuable shared asset. I didn't want to keep anything that reminded me of a past filled with lies. After everything was settled, I felt I needed some time for myself. I decided to take a trip alone to go somewhere far away to clear my head and start a new life. I chose Napa Valley, California, a place quiet enough to heal my wounds. During my days in Napa, I didn't visit many places. I simply spent my time walking along scenic trails, sitting in small, charming cafes, reading and writing. After so many storms, I realized that what I really needed was peace of mind. One cool afternoon, as I was sitting in a rustic wooden cafe overlooking a vineyard, sketching out ideas for a new company project, a familiar voice sounded beside me. Well, small world, I looked up, surprised. It was the police officer who had handled a minor car accident case for me a year prior. His sudden appearance was a bit disconcerting. He was no longer in his strict uniform, but in a comfortable khaki jacket and jeans. He looked much younger and more approachable. The afternoon Napa breeze slightly tasseled his thick dark hair. "Hi," I smiled, trying to hide my surprise. "What a coincidence to see you here. Are you on vacation?" "You could say that," he replied. A gentle smile revealed a slight dimple. "I got transferred here a few weeks ago. You could say I'm starting a new life." He glanced at my notebook and pen. "You were working." "Sorry to interrupt." No, I was just finishing up," I said, quickly closing the notebook. Then he hesitated a bit. "Would you mind if I sit here for a moment? The cafe is very crowded and this is the only free spot." I looked around and indeed the charming little cafe was packed. "Yes, of course, please sit." He pulled up a chair and sat across from me, ordering a hot latte. There was a slightly awkward silence between us. I didn't know what to say, and he also seemed to be looking for a suitable topic of conversation. At the wedding that day, he finally broke the silence. "I saw everything. You were very brave." His words surprised me a little. I thought he had only been there to handle the arrest and was surprised he had noticed other things. "Thank you. Fortunately, it's all over now. I'm David," he introduced himself suddenly. "Chloe," I replied. "Nice to meet you, David." We started talking. At first, it was just light conversation about Napa Valley work and personal hobbies, but gradually the conversation deepened. David told me why he had been transferred. After years of working in the stressful environment of New York, he felt burned out and wanted to live and work in a quieter place. He loved the mountains, the forests, and the fresh air of the valley. Also shared my story, not the painful details of the betrayal, but my decision to leave the city and my desire to find a new balance in life. We realized we had something in common. We were both on a journey to find a new beginning. David was a very engaging person to talk to. He was intelligent and funny, but in his eyes, there was something quiet and deep, typical of someone who has lived a lot. Talking to him made me feel very comfortable, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. The sky began to darken and the warm yellow lights of the cafe came on, creating a very romantic atmosphere. I don't know how long we were talking. "It's getting late," David said, looking at his watch. "I have to get back to the station." "It was a pleasure talking to you, Chloe." "You, too?" I smiled. "Oh, this weekend." He hesitated again. "I'm planning a hike in the hills, and I was wondering if you're not busy, would you like to come?" His invitation made my heart skip a beat. "Hiking? I've never really done it." "All the more reason you should try." He smiled. "The air there is incredible. It helps to release all the stress." I thought for a moment and then nodded. "Yes, I'd love to." After that chance encounter, David and I had our first date. We hiked in the mountains together, walked through vast pine forests, and discovered small hidden restaurants in the alleys of Street Helena. With David by my side, I was no longer the woman who had to be strong, the one who had to distrust everyone. He gave me a strange sense of security and peace. He didn't ask about my past or make me relive painful memories. He just stayed by my side in silence, sharing the small joys of life with me. The feelings between us grew naturally and gently like the morning mist in Napa. One evening, as we were sitting by Lake Beressa, watching the tranquil water reflect the moonlight, David suddenly took my hand. "Chloe," his voice was deep and warm. "I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to stir up old wounds. I just want to say that if you'll let me, I'd like to be the person who writes a new chapter of your life with you. A chapter full of joy and happiness." I looked into his sincere eyes and my heart was moved. Tears welled up again, but this time they were tears of happiness. I said nothing, just nodded and squeezed his warm hand tightly. 2 years later, Mommy, hurry up. Daddy and Uncle Liam are waiting outside. My little daughter Ava's cheerful voice sounded from the door. I smiled and adjusted the bow in her hair. Mommy's coming, my princess. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the image of a woman radiant with happiness. Today was a special day. It was my first wedding anniversary with David and also the day the whole family was going to New York for the opening of a new branch of the Miller Corporation. My life had completely changed after that fateful trip to Napa Valley. I found the true love and happiness of my life. David, after we had been dating for a while, decided to request a transfer back to New York to be by my side. He said that wherever I was, that was where his peace would be. We had a small, warm wedding on the beach with only our loved ones. My brother Liam also found his own happiness after all the storms. He fell in love with a kind teacher, and they recently had their first child, a healthy boy. The Miller Corporation, under Liam's leadership and with my support, grew spectacularly, becoming one of the leading companies in its sector. As the car drove along the familiar highway, Ava sat on my lap, chattering and pointing at everything she saw out the window. David, in the driver's seat, turned around from time to time to look at me and our daughter with a look full of love. When the car passed by a large prison, I suddenly fell silent. I knew that inside there were people paying for their mistakes. I had heard that Ethan was going to receive a reduced sentence soon for his good behavior. I also heard that Sophia had suffered a real mental breakdown and had been transferred to a psychiatric hospital for treatment, and Mr. Caldwell, old and sick, finally broke down behind bars. I no longer hated them. My heart was now filled with peace. All the hatred was behind me, and love and forgiveness had taken its place. The opening party was a great success. Amidst the bustling atmosphere, I received a beautiful bouquet of white roses with no sender's name. Inside was a small card with shaky handwriting, typical of an elderly person. Congratulations. May you be very happy. I knew who it was from. Probably someone somewhere was watching me and sincerely wishing me the best. That night after the party, when Ava was fast asleep, David and I stood on the hotel balcony looking at the bright lights of the New York night. He hugged me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. Thank you, he whispered, for coming into my life, for making my days meaningful. I smiled, turned around, and rested my head on his firm chest. I should be more grateful. Thank you for healing all the wounds within me. We hugged in silence, fully feeling the happiness of the present. Life is truly like a long journey with countless unpredictable forks. There were times when I thought I had fallen into the abyss of despair. But it was in the darkest place that I found the light of my life, a new beginning, a new happiness. Everything was here in my arms. After the trip to New York, we returned to our quiet routine. Our small house was once again filled with Ava's laughter and the warmth of family. My brother Liam also came over often on weekends with his wife and son. Seeing my daughter and my nephew playing together, I felt my heart was completely healed. The past seemed very distant, just an old story I remembered from time to time. The anonymous white roses and the card from the opening day, I simply regarded as a late apology from some relative of Ethan's. I didn't want to think about it or give it more importance. I put the card in a corner of a drawer and locked it as if closing an old chapter of my life. But life is not always as calm as a lake. The first ripples began to form so subtly that at first I thought it was just my hypersensitivity due to everything I had been through. Sometimes while driving down the street, I had the feeling that a familiar black sedan was following me. But when I looked closer in the rearview mirror, the car would disappear into traffic. Once while playing with Ava in a park near our house, I felt a fixed gaze on me and my daughter from a distant bench. It was a middle-aged woman dressed very elegantly with a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses that covered part of her face. When I looked at her again, she immediately turned her head and left the park in a hurry. When I told David about this, he just laughed and hugged me. You're overthinking things again. You're a successful and beautiful executive now. It's normal for some admirer to look at you, but I knew my husband was saying it to reassure me. His police instincts also kept him silently on alert. I'll check the security cameras around the house. It never hurts to be cautious, he added. That incident was also soon forgotten. Until Ava's second birthday, the party was an intimate one at home, just with Liam's family, us, and a few close friends. While everyone was cheerfully singing happy birthday, the doorbell suddenly rang. David went to open it and came back with a beautifully wrapped gift box in his hand, but his expression was a bit strange. And often a vague unease washed over me. The box was wrapped in high-quality gift paper tied with a very elaborate pink silk ribbon. Clearly, the sender had taken great care. Could it be from some business partner who appreciates you? Liam guessed. I thought so, too. It was probably a business gift. I opened the box carefully under everyone's curious gaze. Inside, on a soft velvet lining, was a small and beautiful white gold bracelet, exquisitely crafted. The charm on the bracelet was a finely carved lotus flower with a small diamond in the center that sparkled under the light. It was a very valuable gift, but what made me freeze was not its value, but the small card that came with it. The handwriting on the card was soft, elegant, and very familiar. I opened the card with trembling hands, and inside was a single short line. Happy birthday to our little one. From her grandmother. Our little one from her grandmother. The word grandmother was like a lightning bolt that struck my mind. Who was the grandmother? My mother had passed away. My mother-in-law, David's mother, lives in the countryside and doesn't write with such refined handwriting, and certainly not my trembling ex-mother-in-law. I picked up the card and compared it with the handwriting on the card from the white roses I received at the opening. They were identical. It was the same person. A person who called herself my daughter's grandmother. Chloe, what's wrong? You're as pale as a sheet, David said, shaking my shoulder with concern. I didn't answer, just showed him the card. David read the card and then furrowed his handsome brows. He picked up the bracelet and examined it carefully. This is very strange, he said. Who is this person? How does she know Ava's birthday and send such an expensive gift? I collapsed into a chair, my mind in a mess. Scattered images suddenly came to my mind. The black sedan that followed me, the mysterious woman in the park, the anonymous white roses, and now a white gold bracelet with a note saying, from her grandmother. All of this was not a coincidence. Someone, a woman, was silently watching my life and my daughter's. She knew a lot about us, was very rich, and called herself Ava's grandmother. But how was that possible? My mother had died years ago in a terrible car accident. I myself saw the photo from her funeral and together with Liam, we held her burial. There could be no mistake. So, who was this woman? A distant relative I didn't know or a much more terrible secret I had no idea about. I looked at my little daughter. Ava was still laughing and chattering innocently, completely unaware of the storm that was silently brewing around her. I felt a lump in my throat. I would not allow anyone to harm my daughter. I had to find out the truth. Whoever that mysterious woman was, whatever her purpose was, I had to find her. The quiet life I had worked so hard to achieve seemed to be facing a new storm again. A storm that was blowing from the very past. I thought I knew so well. The mysterious birthday gift completely shattered the cheerful atmosphere of the party. After all the guests had left, only we and Liam's family remained at home. My brother examined the bracelet, his face as serious as mine. This is not a simple matter, he said in a low voice. A custom-made baby bracelet like this, white gold with a diamond, must cost tens of thousands of dollars. This person is no ordinary individual. My sister-in-law, a wise and delicate woman, also spoke up. Couldn't it be someone from your ex-husband's family, Chloe? Maybe they're trying to get close to the child that way. Impossible. I shook my head firmly. They have no reason to. And more importantly, this handwriting isn't theirs. David remained silent for a while, deep in thought, and finally spoke with the seriousness of a police officer. The first thing we need to do is trace the origin of this gift. I'll take the box and wrapping to the crime lab. We might find fingerprints or other clues. And I'll review all the security cameras on the streets near our house today to track the courier's vehicle. Liam nodded in agreement. Right. I'll also use my contacts to ask major jewelers if anyone recognizes this bracelet design. The lotus design is quite unique. It's likely a custom order. Our conversation reached a dead end. Although we considered several hypotheses, none could explain the appearance of this person who called herself grandmother. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I hugged my little daughter, watching her sleeping face. An invisible fear enveloped me. Who was this woman? What did she want with my daughter? Did she have bad intentions? The following days passed in a state of anxiety and worry. David and Liam did everything they could to investigate, but all leads seemed to hit a dead end. The courier service was a small company, and the sender had paid in cash and used a fake name. The security cameras only showed an ordinary delivery person, nothing special. No jeweler recognized the bracelet's design. The mysterious woman seemed to have calculated everything meticulously, leaving no trace. Seeing that the investigation was stalled, I felt even more anxious. I decided I couldn't just wait passively. I had to find the answers myself. I decided to start with my past, with what I knew about my mother. I took a few days off from work, left Ava with my mother-in-law, and returned alone to my parents' old house in the town where my brother and I grew up. I hadn't been back in a long time. The house was still the same, covered in the dust of time, but every corner evoked warm memories of my mother. I started cleaning the attic where my mother kept old items and family keepsakes. I hoped to find among those seemingly insignificant objects some clue about the mysterious woman, some secret my mother never told us. I flipped through the old photo albums one by one. Black and white photos, faded color photos. My mother beautiful and radiant in her youth, my parents happy on their wedding day, and photos of Liam and me as children smiling innocently in our parents' arms. I looked them over and over, but I saw no woman who looked luxurious and unfamiliar. Just as I was about to give up, my hand brushed against a small wooden box hidden at the bottom of an old trunk. The box was locked with a small rusty padlock. After struggling for a while, I managed to open it. Inside, there were no jewels or money, but a stack of yellowed letters carefully tied with a purple ribbon. I picked up the stack of letters with trembling hands. The handwriting was neither my mother's nor my father's. It was the handwriting of a soft, elegant woman, identical to the one on Ava's birthday card. I felt my heart stop. I quickly opened the first letter. My dearest sister Catherine, a year has passed since that fateful day. I still can't forget how you saved me from that car about to explode. I don't know how I can ever repay you for this favor. I'm sending you a small gift. Please accept it. I know you'll refuse, but please don't. Consider it a small token from me for the 2 children you have at home. I must leave now. I can't stay in this place that has taken everything from me. Perhaps one day when everything calms down, we will meet again. With all my love, Adrian. I reread the letter several times, my mind in a turmoil. Sister Catherine, that was undoubtedly my mother. A car accident, a savior. My mother had never told us that story. And Adrian. Who was that woman? Why did she write to my mother? I quickly read the following letters. They were letters sent from abroad, from France and Switzerland. Adrian told my mother about her new life, her loneliness, the torment of having had to leave her home. She always asked about Liam and me, and she always sent us expensive gifts, gifts that my mother probably never told us we had. The last letter was dated about 5 years ago, and the handwriting was a bit shakier. Sister Catherine, I believe my time is short. This illness has tormented me for too long. My only regret is that I never came back to take care of my 2 children. I know I don't deserve to. I abandoned them. But please, sister, love them for me. Tell them that wherever I am, their mother will always be watching over them and loving them. I am sending you this key. It is the key to a personal safe deposit box in a Swiss bank. Inside is all the fortune I have amassed. Please give it to my children when they are older. Consider it the final compensation from a sinful mother. Goodbye, my sister, my friend, and my savior, Adrian. The letter fell from my hands. My whole body was shaking. Children, mother. The whole truth, an incredible truth, was slowly revealing itself before my eyes. This woman, Adrian, as she was. No, it couldn't be. My mother was Catherine Miller, and she was dead. There had to be a mistake. But this stack of letters, this key, and the familiar handwriting, I sat there stunned in the middle of the dusty attic, my mind filled with confusion. The past I knew, the identity I believed in, everything suddenly felt blurry and strange. A huge family secret, a secret buried for over 20 years, was about to be opened, and it was directly related to me. That night, I couldn't sleep a minute. The stack of Adrian's letters and the small key lay silently on the desk, but my mind was a whirlwind. Her mother, 2 children. Those phrases repeated over and over, stabbing deep into my heart. I tried to dismiss the crazy idea that Liam and I were not the biological children of the woman we always called Mom. But everything fit together in a terrifying way. The handwriting, the expensive gifts, and the term grandmother for Ava. The next morning, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to find Liam. He had to know, too. He was my brother, my only family. He had a right to know the truth about our roots. I drove hastily back to the city. I went straight to my brother's office. Seeing my haggard look and sunken eyes, he questioned me with concern. I said nothing. I just silently closed the office door and placed the stack of letters and the key on his desk. Read it, I said in a hoarse voice. Liam, surprised, picked up the first letter. As he read, his expression changed from surprise to astonishment and shock. He read every letter and the hand holding the paper began to tremble. When he finished the last letter, he collapsed into his chair, staring into space with lost eyes. No, it can't be, he muttered, shaking his head over and over. Our mother is Catherine. Who is this Adrian? I thought so too, I said bitterly. But brother, look at this handwriting. It's identical to the one on Ava's birthday card. I showed him the photo of the card I had taken with my phone. Liam stared at both handwritings. The last shred of doubt in his eyes vanished. He covered his face with his hands and his broad shoulders shook. For the first time in my life, I saw my always strong and steady brother so fragile and helpless. We sat in silence for a long time, each lost in our own confused thoughts. The past we knew, the mother we loved, had all suddenly become a big question mark. So, Mom Catherine. Liam lifted his head, his voice wasn't our biological mother. She raised us. She loved us. Why did she hide this from us? I don't know. I shook my head. But I think she had her reasons. Mom Adrian said she had to leave, that she couldn't stay. Something terrible must have happened. A car accident. That clue came back to my mind. Mom Adrian said Mom Catherine saved her. Yes. The secret must be in that car accident, Liam. I looked my brother straight in the eye. We have to find out the truth. Not just for us, but for both our mothers. Liam nodded, his gaze becoming much more determined. You're right. We have to find out what exactly happened 25 years ago. Our investigation began with the vague clues from the letters, the car accident, the date, and the name, Adrian. Thanks to Liam's social standing and David's police contacts, it wasn't too difficult to reopen the old case files, covered in the dust of time. A few days later, we got the accident report. It was a terrible crash in the Rocky Mountains. A luxury car lost control and plunged off a cliff, exploding. According to the report, 4 people were in the car. The CEO of the Rivas Jewelers Group and his wife, and the driver and his wife. It was concluded that all 4 had died. Rivas Jewelers. That name stunned Liam and me. It was an empire that once dominated the American jewelry industry, but mysteriously collapsed shortly after its CEO's death. Wait a minute, said Liam. Rivas. I remember. Our father worked at Rivas before founding the Miller Corporation. He was the CFO there. Another coincidence. Everything seemed to be connected, but the report says all 4 died. I said, puzzled. So, who is Mom Adrian, and why did she say Mom Catherine saved her? That's the key, intervened David, who was sitting with us. He pointed to a part of the autopsy report. Of the 4 bodies found, one was so badly burned it was unrecognizable. Based on some bone fragments, they could only confirm it was a woman, and people assumed it was the wife of the Riva CEO, Mrs. Adrian. That means I held my breath that it's very likely that woman was not Mrs. Adrian. David concluded Mrs. Adrian survived the accident and it's possible that the person who saved her was our mother, Catherine. But for some reason, she chose to become a dead person in everyone's eyes and live another life abroad. But why? Why would a woman with status, money, and everything else abandon it all, even her 2 children? This accident? Liam mused. Was it really an accident or was it murder? My brother's question silenced the room. If it was murder, who was the mastermind? And why did Mom Adrian have to flee? At that moment, David's phone rang. It was an old colleague from New York. He stepped out to answer and came back with a very serious expression. New information, he said. I asked them to check the list of top executives at Rivas Jewelers from that time. Guess who was appointed acting CEO right after the death of CEO Rivas and his wife? Who? Liam and I asked in unison. It was him. David's voice became firm. The CEO of Aurelian Holdings, Mr. Caldwell. That name appeared once again. Our family's old enemy, the man who drove our father to his death. A wave of nausea and anger rose in my throat. This can't be a coincidence. Liam slammed the table. Caldwell, our father, Rivas Jewelers, and that car accident. There has to be a connection. A dark and terrible picture was beginning to take shape. A conspiracy hidden for 25 years. A crime that not only claimed several lives, but also shattered a family. And now, by chance, we seem to be getting closer to the heart of that secret. The search for our roots had unexpectedly turned into the pursuit of the truth of a serial murder case, and the most likely suspect was our family's arch-nemesis. The name Mr. Caldwell was like the key that opened a dark door to the terrible secrets of the past. All the events now came together in a terrifying hypothesis. Mr. Caldwell had not only driven our father to his death to take over the Miller Corporation, but it was very likely that 25 years earlier he was behind that terrible accident to devour the entire Rivas Jewelers Group. If that's true, Liam gritted his teeth. He's not human. He's a demon. But all of this is just conjecture for now, said David, trying to maintain the calm of a law professional. We don't have concrete evidence to charge him. The case is too old and almost all traces have likely been erased. And Mom Adrian, I intervened. If she's alive, she's the most important witness. She'll know exactly what happened. But why did she flee? Why didn't she come forward to report it? She was probably scared, Liam replied. The enemy was too powerful. She had to worry not only about herself, but also about her 2 children. Perhaps becoming a dead person was the only way to protect us. I felt a lump in my throat. My biological mother's departure was not an abandonment, but a silent sacrifice. She had to give up everything for the safety of her 2 children, living in loneliness and torment in a foreign country. And our mother, Catherine, who raised us, was also part of that sacrifice. She lived her whole life with that secret locked in her heart. What do we do now? I asked, looking alternately at David and Liam. Go to Switzerland to find Mom, Adrian? I suggested. No, David and Liam opposed, almost in unison. It's too dangerous, David explained. Mr. Caldwell is a cunning old fox. His information network is everywhere. If he finds out we're investigating, he won't hesitate to use any means to silence us, just like he did with your father. Besides, we're not sure Mom Adrian wants to see us. The last letter was written 5 years ago, and no one knows what situation she's in now. David is right. Liam continued. What we need to do now is look for evidence here first. The safe deposit box key is the most important clue. It's very likely that the fortune Mom Adrian left not only contains money, but also something that can expose Mr. Caldwell's crimes. But that's a Swiss bank, I said worriedly. Their bank secrecy laws are the strictest in the world. Even if we have the key, I don't think I can just go and open it myself. Leave it to me, Liam said with a determined look. I have a lawyer friend who specializes in international law. I'll ask him to find a solution. It might take time, but it's not impossible. While Liam handled the Switzerland issue, David and I decided to start from another angle, looking for former witnesses who worked at Rivas Jewelers at the time of the accident. 25 years is a long time, but surely there were still people who knew what happened. People who had to keep silent due to Mr. Caldwell's oppression, bribery, or threats. Our search was very difficult. Many people had moved. Many had passed away. Those who remained upon mentioning the names Rivas, Jewelers, and Mr. Caldwell all shook their heads in fear and refused to talk. Mr. Caldwell's power and cruelty had cast such a large shadow that it had oppressed them for decades. After several days of desperate searching, we finally had a stroke of luck. We found Mr. Paul, the retired former chauffeur of the Riva CEO's family. He was now a frail old man living alone in a small house in the suburbs. When we arrived, he was sitting on his porch, looking into the distance with sad eyes. At first, he also refused to talk, but when I showed him the photo of Mom Adrian and told him my identity, his old eyes filled with tears. Miss, are you Miss Chloe? He asked in a trembling voice. When I nodded, Mr. Paul burst into tears. My God, you're alive. I thought the whole CEO's family. He invited us into his house. After calming down, he began to tell the story of 25 years ago, a story he had kept in his heart like a nightmare. The day of the accident, Mr. Paul said in a trembling voice, I was supposed to drive that car, but that morning, the then vice president, Mr. Caldwell, suddenly sent me to another state on an errand. He said it was urgent and sent another driver in my place. He was a young kid who had just started. I didn't know him well. When I heard the news of the accident, I felt something was wrong, he continued. That car was the CEO's. I checked it every day. It was impossible for the brakes to fail. I tried to tell the police, but no one believed me. They said I was rambling from grief. And a few days later, Mr. Tell the police. Caldwell sent someone to give me a large sum of money and threatened that if I kept talking, my family would not be safe. Out of fear for my children, Mr. Paul hung his head, his voice filled with regret. I had to keep silent. I took the money and left the job. For these 25 years, I haven't slept a single night in peace. Remorse and guilt have constantly tormented me. Mr. Paul's testimony was living proof that the accident was not a coincidence, but a meticulously planned conspiracy. Mr. Caldwell, Mr. Paul added, was not only cruel, but also very distrustful. He always had a small recorder installed in the CEO's office to monitor all his conversations. I once accidentally saw him secretly changing the batteries. A flash of insight struck me. A recorder. If it was still there, it was very likely that it had recorded important conversations, evidence that could expose Mr. Caldwell's crimes. But where is that office? Rivas Jewelers no longer exists. Its old headquarters must now be owned by another company. When we felt lost, Mr. Paul provided another valuable piece of information. After the CEO's death, Mr. Caldwell sealed his entire old office. He said it was to preserve his memories, but I know he was scared. Scared that someone would find something inside. That room is still intact on the top floor of the old Rivas building. All the clues seem to converge on one point. A room sealed for 25 years that might contain the black box of the entire case. But how could we get into such a heavily guarded place owned by another group? The old Riva's building was now called Elian Tower, standing in the city center like an impregnable fortress. Infiltrating it, especially the sealed room on the top floor, was an almost impossible mission for ordinary people like us. This can't be done through normal channels, David said after circling the building. The security system here is state-of-the-art. There are surveillance cameras everywhere and guards patrolling 24/7. The access doors on each floor use magnetic cards. It's impossible to get in through the front door. While we were racking our brains, we finally received a call from Liam, who had been silent for several days with important news. I've spoken with my lawyer friend. He says that as biological children, we have the full right to request information about our mother's safe deposit box at the Swiss bank, but the process is very complicated and will take at least a few months. But he discovered something interesting. 5 years ago, right when Mom Adrian sent the last letter, someone else tried to access that safe deposit box but failed due to lack of identity documents. Who? I asked anxiously. It was Mr. Caldwell's people. A chill ran down my spine. He also knew about the existence of that safe deposit box. He had been looking for it for years. This confirmed to us even more that inside there was something that threatened him, and it also meant that we didn't have much time left. If Mr. Caldwell discovered we were investigating, he wouldn't hesitate to act first. The urgency of the situation forced us to make a bold decision. If we can't get in through the front door, I said, looking at David and Liam, we'll get in another way. Aurelian Tower and our Miller Tower are right next to each other. The height of the roofs of both buildings is almost the same. Don't tell me. Liam looked at me in amazement. No, Chloe, it's too dangerous. It's the only way, I said firmly. We don't have any more time. You can disable the security system of Miller Tower. David has the technology and experience as a police officer, and I have to get in there. That room is related to my past. After a long discussion, they both had to reluctantly agree. The plan was drawn up with great detail and caution. The time of action was set for 2 a.m. when activity in both buildings comes to a complete halt. That night, the city slept. Only the faint lights of the street lamps remained. When I stood on the roof of Miller Tower with David, my heart was pounding like a drum. The wind at that height whipped my hair fiercely. From here, the roof of Aurelian Tower seemed to be only about 15 feet away. It wasn't a great distance, but it was an abyss between life and death. David carefully prepared the equipment. He was an expert at this. He used a special gun to launch a high-strength cable to the railing of the opposite building. The cable was firmly anchored at both ends. I'll go first, David said in a deep, reassuring voice. When I cross and secure the area, you'll slide down the rope. Don't be afraid. I'll hold you tight. I nodded. My palms were already damp with sweat. I held my breath as I watched David deftly hang from the rope and cross the dark void. A few minutes later, he arrived safely on the other side and signaled to me it was my turn. I took a deep breath and clung tightly to the cold rope. My whole body was suspended in the night sky. Below, the city light seemed distant, and a small mistake could make me fall. But the thought of my mother, of the truth that awaited me on the other side, gave me strength. When my feet touched the railing of Aurelian Tower, David rushed to help me. You did it, he whispered proudly. We quickly disabled the roof cameras and found our way to the emergency stairs. The sealed office was just on the floor below. The old lock was no problem for David. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a space that had been plunged into darkness and dust for 25 years. We turned on a small flashlight and the dim light scanned the room. Everything was as Mr. Paul had described. The desk, the bookshelf, the sofa set, all covered in a thick layer of dust. The stale air smelled of time. According to Mr. Paul, the recorder was hidden behind a large oil painting on the wall. David carefully took down the painting. Sure enough, an old cassette recorder was cleverly installed in a small recess in the wall. Will it still work? I asked worriedly. It's hard to say, David replied. But let's take it anyway. While David dismantled the device, I started searching further. I intuitively felt there had to be something else in that room. The light of my flashlight scanned the bookshelf. Hundreds of old leather-bound books, mostly on management and law. Suddenly, I remembered a habit of my father's. As a CFO, he also always carried a small notebook where he jotted down the most important things, the secrets he didn't want anyone to know. Would CEO Rivas have a similar habit? I started pulling out the books one by one, flipping through the pages quickly. And when I picked up a thick law book titled Justice and Truth, I noticed it was strangely heavy. When I opened it, I felt my heart stop. The inside of the book was hollowed out, leaving a space just for a small black leather-bound notebook. I picked it up with trembling hands. This is it. It has to be this. Just then, we heard footsteps and a faint murmur of voices from the hallway. Check the roof area carefully. I think I saw a suspicious shadow. I felt my heart drop to my stomach. We had been discovered. The building's security guards were on patrol. The way back was blocked. We were trapped in this secret room. The footsteps in the hallway grew closer. The light from the security team's flashlight seeped through the crack under the door, creating ghostly shadows in the dusty room. I felt a knot in my chest, and a cold sweat ran down my back. If we were caught here with this evidence in hand, our entire plan would be ruined. We would be charged with trespassing, and the notebook and recorder would never see the light of day. David motioned for me to be silent. He quickly turned off the flashlight and pulled me behind a huge old filing cabinet. We held our breath, trying not to make the slightest sound. We heard the jingle of a key in the lock. My heart was about to burst. They were coming in. This room has been sealed for a long time. Who would come in here? One voice said. Better safe than sorry, replied another. Lately, the boss has been telling us to keep a close eye on this area. The boss had to be someone from Mr. Caldwell's camp. Despite so many years, he was still having this place watched. That confirmed even more that he knew very well what was hidden in here. The lock clicked and the door creaked open. A dazzling beam of flashlight light swept across the room. David and I almost stopped breathing, pressed against the cold filing cabinet. Fortunately, the cabinet was very large, and we were hiding in the deepest corner. See, nothing, just dust and cobwebs, the first voice said again. Come on, let's check other places. They lingered at the door for a few more seconds. The light scanned the room again, and then the door slammed shut. We heard the lock click again, and the footsteps faded away. We were safe, at least for now. I let out a sigh of relief, feeling my strength fail me. David motioned for me to wait a little longer. About 10 minutes later, when we were sure the security team had moved on, he turned the small flashlight back on. We have to get out of here now, he whispered. The way we came is no longer safe. But how? The main door is locked, and there are guards in the hallway. We were completely trapped. David's gaze scanned the room and stopped at a small ventilation window near the ceiling. That's the only way out. That window was very small and high up, barely enough for one person to pass through. Moreover, it opened onto the building's facade. Outside, there was only a narrow ledge, barely a foot wide, running along the wall. It's too dangerous. I shook my head. One small misstep. And it's the only option, David said firmly. Do you trust me? In this critical situation, his calm and determination were my only support. I nodded. David moved the old desk against the wall and stacked a chair on top. He climbed up first and carefully unlatched the window. A gust of cold night air rushed in. That lead leads to an emergency balcony at the end of the hall, he explained. It's about 30 feet away. I'll go first and come back to help you. You just have to stick to the wall and walk very slowly. With that, he slipped out the window and carefully stepped onto the narrow ledge. My heart leaped into my throat, watching him. A strong gust of wind could have sent him falling, but David moved with great professionalism. His steps were firm, his back pressed against the wall. A few minutes later, he reached the emergency balcony safely and signaled to me. It was my turn. The notebook and recorder were safely tucked into my crossbody bag. I took a deep breath, trying not to look down. My legs trembled as I stepped onto the ledge. I felt my whole body press against the cold wall. The wind whistled in my ears, carrying the sounds of the city at night. Don't be afraid. Just look at me. I heard David's voice from ahead. A deep, calm, and reassuring voice. Just one step at a time. I focused on David's figure, trying not to think about the deep abyss below. 30 feet had never seemed so long. When my hand finally touched the one David held out to me, I felt like I had come back to life. We went down several floors via the emergency stairs and then found a way back into the main hallway. Fortunately, the security team was patrolling another area. We quickly returned to the roof and crossed back to Miller Tower on the rope. When my feet touched familiar ground, I collapsed, panting. The suffocating escape was finally over. Back in the safety of my apartment, we didn't rest, but immediately began examining what we had brought back. Liam had also arrived and listened to our story with a worried expression. David carefully opened the old recorder. After fiddling with it for a while, he managed to get it working. We held our breath and listened intently. The old cassette tape began to turn, emitting the static of time, and then we heard a familiar voice, that of CEO Rivas, my biological father. He was talking on the phone. I don't agree, Vice President Caldwell. That project is too risky. The cash flow isn't transparent. I can't approve it. After a brief silence, his voice became sharper. I've told you before. Don't try to fool me. I know what you're doing behind my back. If you don't stop, I will reveal everything to the world." The call ended and my heart was pounding. This was proof of the conflict between my father and Mr. Caldwell. But the next recording truly stunned us. This time it was Mr. Caldwell's voice. He was talking to someone. "The old man has found out everything. We can't leave him alive." "A car accident?" "Yes, it has to look like an accident." "His family. Take care of all of them. Leave no one behind. And then Riva's will be ours." A recorded confession from 25 years ago. An undeniable confession. At the same time, I opened the black leather-bound notebook. Inside were not only records of Rivas Jewelers' business transactions, but also short diary entries from my father. He wrote about his worry upon discovering Mr. Caldwell's conspiracy, his anxiety about feeling watched, and his infinite love for his wife and 2 young children. And on the last page, there was a line written hastily in a special ink, an ink visible only under ultraviolet light, a prudent habit of finance professionals. Liam and I knew it well. We quickly turned off the lights and David shone a small UV flashlight he always carried onto the paper. The writing appeared, all original evidence, contracts, account statements are in the safe deposit box at the Swiss bank. Number XYZ. I have entrusted the key to Catherine. If anything happens to me, trust her. Catherine will know what to do. Everything became clear. Mom Catherine not only raised us, but was the trusted person my father entrusted with the mission of protecting the most important evidence, the inheritance, and the future of his 2 children. The love and sacrifice our 2 mothers showed us were immense and grand. Tears welled up again, but this time they were tears of gratitude and pride. We now had in our hands the confession from the past, the clue to the decisive evidence stored in Switzerland, and Mr. Caldwell's current crimes. The plan for the final counterattack, the decisive battle, was about to begin. The net of heaven had been woven tightly. All that was left was for the biggest fish to fall into it himself. With irrefutable evidence in our hands, we knew the hour of final judgment was very near. But we were also aware that confronting a cunning old fox like Mr. Caldwell required not acting rashly. A small mistake could give him the opportunity to turn the tables and erase all traces. "We need a perfectly flawless plan," Liam said with a firm expression. "We have to hit him by surprise without giving him time to react." The plan was drawn up with the participation of all 3 of us. Liam, with his position in the business world, would deliver the decisive blow in the commercial arena. David, with the support of his trusted colleagues, would handle the legal aspect to leave him no escape, and I would confront him directly, becoming the fuse for the bomb that was about to detonate. The first step was to resolve the matter in Switzerland. With the recording and the notebook as evidence and the cooperation of the American police, Liam's lawyer friend quickly managed to convince the Swiss bank. They agreed to open the safe deposit box, but on the condition that I was present, and the process was carried out under the supervision of both parties. A week later, Liam and I were in Zurich, Switzerland. The bank vault was cold and silent. When the familiar metal box was placed on the table, my heart pounded again. Mom Catherine's key slid smoothly into the lock, and with a turn, the box door clicked open. Inside, there was no money or jewels, but a thick stack of documents carefully wrapped in plastic. They were all the originals of the ghost contracts, the bank statements recording the illicit money flows, and all the secret agreements Mr. the Pant Waller Caldwell had used to take over Rivas Jewelers. Each document bore his handwritten signature. This was the ultimate weapon, the final sword that could end that demon's career. With the lawyer present, we made copies of all the material and immediately sent them to David. Everything was ready. Upon our return to the United States, the atmosphere was tense. Mr. Caldwell, after the failed intrusion attempt at Aurelian Tower, seemed to have sensed the danger. He began to exhibit defensive behavior. The number of his bodyguards doubled, and all his meetings were strictly controlled. "He's trying to erase his tracks and move his assets," David reported in an emergency meeting. "We have to act before it's too late." D-Day was set. It was the day of the Aurelian Holdings annual general meeting, a major event that brought together all the management, major shareholders, and the media. It would be the perfect stage for us to end this play. That morning, I chose a deep red dress, a color symbolizing power and determination. Liam wore his usual elegant suit, but in his eyes was an unusually fierce determination. We attended not as competitors, but as guests of honor, a surprising move Liam had arranged beforehand through some shareholders favorable to the Miller Corporation. The convention center auditorium was packed. Mr. Caldwell sat at the head of the stage, still maintaining an expression of confidence and authority. He was giving a passionate speech about Aurelian Holdings' achievements and its ambitious future plans, a perfect speech from a competent leader. When his speech ended to thunderous applause, Liam gave me a signal. "Now, excuse me." A voice boomed from the doorway. It was David entering in uniform with an investigative team. "Mr. Richard Caldwell, CEO of Aurelian Holdings. We are here to execute an emergency arrest and search warrant in connection with charges of organized murder and misappropriation of assets." The entire hall was stunned and all cameras instantly turned towards the stage. Mr. Caldwell leaped up, his face changing, but he tried to maintain his composure. "What are you talking about? There must be some mistake. I am an honest businessman." "There is no mistake, Mr. Caldwell." I raised my voice as I walked from the audience. All eyes turned back to me. "Or would you like me to remind you of the car accident that took place in the Rocky Mountains 25 years ago?" Hearing this, the composure on his face completely crumbled. He looked at me and in his eyes were hatred and astonishment. Liam also stood up and went on stage. He held a stack of documents in his hand and also what you did to my father. "The time has come for you to pay for all your crimes." Liam signaled to the technical crew and on the giant screen behind Mr. Caldwell instead of growth charts, images of documents, contracts, and bank statements appeared. At the same time, the recording of Mr. Caldwell's own voice, ordering the elimination of the entire Rivas family echoed throughout the hall. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." Mr. Caldwell roared like a wounded beast, running frantically towards the control panel. But it was too late. All the evidence had been revealed before hundreds of people before the cameras of the entire country. David and his colleagues quickly moved in and put him in handcuffs. "Richard Caldwell, you are under arrest." The Aurelian Holdings empire, built on the blood and tears of others, collapsed in an instant. Standing on the stage, I watched as the enemy of two families was led away. I felt no jubilation, but a strange light relief. Justice had finally been served. "Mom, Dad, are you watching? We did it." Amidst it all, a woman ran out from the crowd and knelt at my feet, crying inconsolably. It was Mr. Caldwell's wife. "Miss Chloe, please forgive my husband. He was just too ambitious." I looked at the poor woman before me and then looked out the window. The sky was still blue, the sun was still warm, and life would go on. But there are mistakes that can never be forgiven. The case of Aurelian Holdings' collapse caused a huge shock, not only in the business world, but throughout society. The crimes hidden for 25 years finally came to light. The media reported and analyzed day after day the cruelty and cunning of Mr. Caldwell. He went from being a successful entrepreneur, an example of self-made success, to the embodiment of evil in an instant. With irrefutable evidence, Mr. Caldwell was sentenced to the maximum penalty for his crimes. His accomplices, the subordinates who had helped him for years, were also brought to justice and received the punishment they deserved. After the trial, our lives gradually returned to normal. The Miller Corporation, after eliminating an unfair competitor, experienced spectacular development, becoming a company not only financially sound, but also respected for its business ethics. Liam, after avenging his father, seemed to have lifted a huge weight off his shoulders. He became more cheerful and open, spending more time with his small family. As for Rivas Jewelers, as the sole legitimate heirs, Liam and I decided not to keep it. It was stained with too much blood and tears. We decided to sell all the group's assets. A portion was used to compensate the victims and their families who had been harmed by Mr. Caldwell's illegal practices. The rest was used to create a charitable foundation called the Adrian and Catherine Foundation, a foundation to help orphans and women in difficult situations. It was the best way to honor and thank our two great mothers. A year after the major case was closed, I received a letter, not an email, but a handwritten letter from an address in France. The handwriting was much weaker, but I recognized it instantly. It was Mom Adrienne's handwriting. "My dearest children, Liam and Chloe, by the time you read this letter, Mom will be in a very distant place. From the explosion at the wedding to the final trial, Mom has seen everything. You were very brave and strong. Mom is very proud of you. I know you may never forgive the mother who abandoned you for decades, but I truly had no other choice. The death of long ago was the only way to protect you from the clutches of that demon. I had to live with torment, longing, and guilt. But knowing you were growing up safely under the love of my sister Catherine made all my sacrifice worthwhile. Now that the wicked man has paid for his crimes, the heavy burden on my heart can finally be released. I believe I can now go in peace and reunite with your father. Be happy, my children. Live a truly meaningful life in the name of your mother and father. I love you very much, Mom Adrienne." Attached to the letter was my mother's death certificate. She had passed away just a few days after Mr. Caldwell's trial ended. Liam and I hugged each other and cried. They were tears of sadness, but also of understanding and peace. we could finally call her mom with a peaceful heart. My life, after so many storms, finally found a quiet harbor. David and I decided to have a small, warm wedding in Napa Valley, where our love began. On the wedding day, instead of a luxurious wedding dress, I chose an elegant silk dress in a soft blush color, simple and pure. In my hand, instead of a bouquet, I held tightly to the hand of David, the man who had accompanied me through the most difficult times. Liam looked at me with a happy smile, his eyes shining with joy. Ava, in a beautiful princess dress, scattered rose petals on the path we walked. Amidst that warm atmosphere, we had a special guest. It was Mr. Paul, the former chauffeur. He brought us a small gift, an old photo of my biological parents in a simple wooden frame. "Miss, I wish you all the happiness," he said in a trembling voice. I accepted the gift with a heart full of emotion. The past was over, but the good memories and good feelings would last forever. That afternoon, as the sun set over the rolling hills of Napa, David and I stood side by side looking at the distant horizon. A new chapter of life, a new life full of love and hope was opening before us. I knew that from now on, no storm could knock me down because by my side there would always be people who loved me unconditionally. And I believe that somewhere high above my three parents, my mothers and fathers will be watching over us and blessing us with a smile.